Welcome to the Tessa Tubbs Podcast. This platform is for people who are serious about shaping a different future for themselves, but who may not always know where to start, how to keep going, or how to do that work without burning out or shrinking who they are. This season marks a shift from focusing primarily on leading others to focusing on leading self. I'm not talking about performance or titles, but how we come to understand ourselves accurately, take ownership of our choices, and live with intention, especially after pivotal moments that quietly change how we relate to success, identity, and purpose. And we're having these conversations at a moment when burnout is normalized, productivity is glorified, and many high-functioning people are quietly exhausted, doing all the right things, yet sensing something is off. That's the context for today's conversation. Today, I'm joined by Adam Tanaka. Adam is a founder, serial entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and a vocal challenger of burnout culture. After building and selling his first company after 17 years, he chose not to simply repeat the same definition of success, but to reimagine it. He's the founder of Cave House Supply, a kids brand focused on confidence, creativity, and storytelling. Through his speaking and advisory work, Adam helps founders, executives, and organizations rediscover unstructured play as a catalyst for creativity, collaboration, and mental well-being. Adam is also a TEDx speaker, a Metro Public Schools partner, and someone who brings a deeply human lens to conversations about leadership and mental health. Adam, I'm really glad you're here.
I'm so stoked to be here. Thank you for having me.
Before we talk about play, leadership, or mental health, I want to start with the internal shift that sits underneath the work you're doing today. When you look back on your journey, especially around the transition after selling your first company, was there a defining moment or season that fundamentally changed how you saw yourself?
You know, after selling my first company of 17 years, I thought that it was one of those things where I thought that it was a time for celebration. And initially, you know, that's a pivotal moment. Like, it's significant, every founder's dream. And what I did was find myself stuck back into that rhythm of, no, I've got to, my break is going to be diving back into more work. And I think that pivotal moment came when my partner, Kelsey, said, "Hey, I'm noticing some signs on your face that you need to stop for a minute and take a step back." And so we actually took a trip out of the country to Iceland, and soon after, and we were there for a little over a week, and that was the shift. I was finding myself in the most beautiful country in the world, breaking down in a rental car with the ocean behind me and mountains in front of me, and that was the moment where everything kind of clicked. That for 17 plus years, and what has happened to where I am now, what needs to be done in my life. Because I was losing my sense of self really quickly. And so, yeah, I came back, clear headspace, and that's when things kind of took off without even me having a plan or a goal.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, one, kudos to your partner who you put up the mirror, right? And helped you sort of see and reflect and think about that point where your identity, even though you had this transition with selling the company, clearly there was a version of stopping to work. But still, I think what you described, so many of us do. We're like, oh, I have this break, and the break isn't really a break. It's about preparing for the next body of work. So the fact that you had someone around you to put up the mirror, and the fact that you heeded the call, right? Like, you responded, you were open, and you were receptive, and then you did something about it. So as you're looking back on that season, and you talk about sort of being in, the mountains in front, the oceans behind, like, what did you have to confront about who you actually were, not who you were perceived to be? When you think about that unlock, how did that happen for you?
Well, I will say that to clarify, when she told me, "Hey, I think it might be time to take a step back," I fought it for a month. I fought it hard for a month. That was 100%, like being stubborn, being naive, but in the wrong way. But I think that moment, that moment, that shift of, again, being in the rental car, 3 hours sitting there, just breaking down, who am I? I don't have a clue anymore. It came back to a memory popped in my head of, and this is going to sound, well, whatever. So a memory popped in my head of when my therapist many years ago told me to sit on the floor as an adult. Here's some crayons. And he rolled out this long white roll of paper, blank paper, and said, I want you to just draw. I want you to draw where you're at right now. And I want you to draw where you want to go. And and so I looked at, I remember, and this was going on, like I was talking out loud in the rental car in Iceland all about this, and just like how I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm an adult. But what he was doing was walking me through, basically taking me back to who I was as a kid, and that sense of just play, but more so just, adventure. That's the word that kept popping in my head, because for so long I was Adam. I'm the founder of, this is what we do. This is what I do. This is how I work. This is, every networking event was just the same thing over and over, and truly not realizing how exhausting it was becoming, and just really taking me down. And so talking through for almost 3 hours in this little car, all about that, I came to that conclusion that I wasn't founder Adam. I wasn't this business person that's been doing this for so long. I was an adventurer. I like hiking in mountains, and I like true, deep connection with other people. And I overthinking and overcomplicating was so much of my life. And so being able to completely just watch that just evaporate. And so truly at the end of that whole talking out everything there, I got out of the car and I started walking the beach, and it was cold that day, and I was crying. And from that point forward, I really did, like, this might sound a little ridiculous, but I felt like a completely new person. Like, I was Kid Adam again, as a 42-year-old Kid Adam. And I was jumping rocks, climbing the mountains, like just taking off and remembering what it was like, that true freedom and creativity. And so, yeah, it was definitely a shift.
I love so much about this story. I think, a couple of things that stand out in what you're describing, right? It's like myth busting those narratives, right? That we tell ourselves. Like, I was entrepreneur Adam, right? And it's like, wait, but I'm more than that. And even like, what are those patterns that we've had, we that are actually have been in us from childhood, that as we get into adulthood and we, what is the saying? Adulting's hard, right? We deal with a lot of complexity, and it's just like, we lose sight of what was simple and made a lot of sense and was fulfilling, and how you sort of was able to get back to that. But I think the thing that all of that resonates for me, and I love the fact that, one, you clarified, hey, even when someone put up the mirror, I wasn't like, yes, I see, right? But because we all can do that. We all have that sort of resistance point, because there's so many messages in our culture that says, oh no, you were supposed to do it a certain way, and we're just sort of on autopilot. But also the fact that you had the therapist who had you do something that was uncomfortable and seemed silly or ridiculous, yet was an unlock for you and came back to you years later, right, as a catalyst for this transition. As you're telling that story, it reminds me, I actually had stepped away from corporate after, I want to say, maybe 20 years of service, really to take some time on that I thought was going to be 3 months to care for an aging parent, to help her with her recovery. And that 3 months turned into 3 years. And a similar thing happened for me in that space, where I was sort of forced to stop working in the way I was traditionally working. It was when I first started my consulting practice. And I had a similar, like, wait, who am I? Now I no longer had the multinational logo on my card. I wasn't, the door, no one was knocking on the door for me to be the guest speaker at some large HR conference, whatever. And suddenly I was left with Tessa. And I didn't realize how much of my identity had gotten lost in the title and the logo and the platforms and things like that. And similar to you, yours was connecting to adventure. Mine was connecting back to humor and my sense of humor and play and fun and joking and laughing and being silly. Because you can imagine as an HR person, that's not allowed, right? You're sort of policing a lot of things. You're limited in how close of a relationship you can build with people, because one day it's fun and the next day it's, oh, there might be layoffs. Or one day it's fun and the next day it's like, oh, we got to do an investigation on this person, right? Like, or sorry, you're not going to be the one named to be the next chief fill in the blank. So often you're sending harsh messages. So you're trained to limit how close you get and how much of your guard you let down and how much fun, right, and play you bring into the work environment. And so I love your story of unpacking what that was like for you. And it reminds me, my catalyst was slightly different. And when I heard your TED Talk, this was one of the things that really, it connected for me, because I was thinking about that experience and like, I remember like rediscovering who I was, rediscovering, the humor, the fun part of Tessa that no longer laughed at jokes, that didn't crack a smile, that held the corporate line. So I am really grateful that our paths crossed, but I'm also really grateful for how you tell the story about your journey of rediscovering play and rediscovering self.
Wow. And that's incredible for you. Yes. Like I know the thing is I know so many people in the corporate world, healthcare, tech, you name it. And similar stories of just that whole, like, I'm at work, this is what it is. And then they take that home and, it's by the book, but they feel like they're stuck there. And that's what just makes me want to like, just cringe at they're not stuck. I know they're not stuck. Like, we can do this.
So this notion of people getting stuck, as you tell your story about getting unstuck, right, at that moment on the beach and in the 3 hours in the rental car, what choices did you realize at that point were yours alone to make? Like, what I'm trying to get to is, where did you sort of stop waiting for permission or validation or the next external signal? Because you said, like, I left that beach feeling like a new person. Tell me a little bit about that shift of not waiting for permission, not waiting for validation, but really owning your responsibility of this and leaning into the person you wanted to become.
Yeah. So it was, I remember the moment clearly. It was, we were driving away and, it's Iceland. There's one road around the whole island. And so we were driving and there's a ton of sheep farmers. And this is going to sound like the most boring story in the world, but for me, it changed everything. And it was this moment of, while we left, we were driving and I noticed this sheep farmer off the side of the road, tiny, small house, but a mountain was his backyard. And I said, pull over. And so we pulled over and I just watched him, and he came out of his house. He had his huge rake across his shoulder, was walking the field, and he just started kind of raking up the hay. The sheep were coming over and eating, and he just stood there and watched them. And this tells you everything. Is the first thing I thought was, I bet that sheep farmer doesn't have a LinkedIn, but more so, it just completely solidified everything of like, dude, you've been overcomplicating and everything your entire life. And so you have a choice in this moment where, when we get back in this car and we drive off, you can either choose to go back or stay and go backwards, or you can freaking rock it and just go. And so I said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done playing games. Like, and so that was the ultimate kind of shift. Was we got back in the car and I had the biggest smile on my face, and I was like, I know what I need to do. I know exactly what I need to do. And and that was it. It was that sheep farmer.
I love that story. I'm curious as you talk about that, the simplified life, right, of a sheep farmer. I'm sure he has his own versions of complexity, but simplified in what it felt like in that moment. Clear how it can provide that unlock for creativity and for you professionally. I'm just curious, how did, if at all, did it also show up for you emotionally or relationally?
Well, I will say that just because my partner was there, she, and she's just one of the most supportive people ever. But that moment, I felt completely just closer to her than ever before.
Mm,
One, and then two, it was that unlock of kind of the past was flooding in pretty heavy in that moment,
mhm.
and pretty much for the rest of the trip. And so it was like it was a heavy time, like the rest of the trip, but it was me working through every little bit of trauma, every little bit of mistakes that I would continue to beat myself up for even 10, 12, 15 years later.
Mm.
And so it was really kind of me unlearning. I would say just taking the rest of that time to start unlearning every little bit that I carried for so long. And I told so many close friends of mine when I got back, it felt like when we left that there was this wooden boat and I was able to light it on fire and just kind of push it out into the water and watch it just kind of just go. And that's where I feel like I left all of that and was able to come back with just so much more of a clear headspace.
I love that. And I just want to pause here for a moment because what you're describing isn't just about creativity or play. It's also about what happens when we stop organizing our lives around proving something and start organizing ourselves around the things that are actually sustaining to us. And so I just want to invite our listening audience to think about, if they're finding themselves right now nodding along to what you're saying, this may not be about changing everything that they have going on in their lives, but it may be about noticing what's already asking for their attention. I love the comment you made around this was about unlearning. And it wasn't like unlearning what I did 30 days before, but sometimes it's unlearning 10 years, 12 years, 15 years prior. So as people are listening to this, it's like, hey, there may be a signal, right, for you right now about something to pay attention to, something that may need to be addressed to create that unlock, or something that we just simply got to put down and unlearn in order for us to do differently.
Mm.
Today your work centers a lot on creativity, play, and mental well-being, especially in cultures like our North American culture where we reward overwork and burnout. How do you live differently now because of what you learned then?
Mm. Well, one thing is I made a joke with some people before I left Nashville last month. The joke was that all the work that I do with kids and the work that I do with adults and founders and entrepreneurs wouldn't work in most other countries. Like it wouldn't work. I would be out of a job because of what you said earlier. Like, but I would say that the way that I live now, based around the not my work that I do, but just where I'm at in life, is that I don't have to think really hard about how I can disconnect from the busyness.
Mm.
And it just comes naturally. And it was a lot of work to get there. I mean, clearly, but I prioritize so much that I just kept pushing back year after year after year, not just play, but mental wellness, mental well-being. That suffered tremendously. As a founder, most entrepreneurs get that when I say that. Nobody talks about that dark side of being the entrepreneur. And I have something that I can always go back to know that I will never get there again. And, year 6 of my first company was when it all came tumbling down and me not wanting to exist anymore. I was done. I wanted to call it quits in business and in life. And that was one of those things that, I made it a priority, because of that experience, that I will never, if I know a founder, an entrepreneur, I will always make it a point to know that they have somebody in their corner, and that how important it is to build connection and community with other fellow entrepreneurs and mentors and advisors, coaches, whatever. And so I think for me, being able to take time out of every single day, step back, and I call it take 5. And it's simple, it's quick. I just take 5 minutes and I completely disconnect from everything going on around me, from work, emails, you name it. And I just play. I do something that has no end result. And to me, I'm a musician. So, I mentioned this in my TEDx talk, but sometimes I sit behind the drums for 5 minutes and I just play, and it doesn't make sense sometimes. There's no rhythm to it. I'm just playing around, and it's either that or just, running outside and going on a walk, that I consider that play. And so, yeah, that all of that is starting to come just naturally, and where it never did before. And that's kind of the biggest piece for me, there.
I love that. And the fact that you reference today, it's already well queued up in how you function, what you know to turn to, what's a simple form of play, maybe a more complex, et cetera, right? So you have your list. That's actually one of the things that I took away when we had our call preparing for our podcast a few months ago. I left that call and immediately went and created my list, right? My list of things to do that gives me joy and creates easy outlets, and not always waiting for, a vacation or a cruise or something big to play in, but what's the everyday stuff, right? So I now have my favorite mug where I can feel the heat in the right way for my coffee, or the spot on the back porch. I actually redid my patio furniture so I can enjoy the backyard a little bit more. And my son brought me it's become my favorite garment, a new robe for Christmas, and it's just the right texture, right? It's just the warmth it creates. So I've incorporated it into my day and how I move and start my morning in particular. And so I love this idea of small things that you can do to create play and to create that outlet and provide that mental health break that we all need, whether we're entrepreneurs or not. Life is hard. Life is complex. We can get disappointed and frustrated easily, especially when we've been working hard at something for a long time and it isn't quite realized, or the finances are tight, or we're fighting with significant others, or family is family, right? So all the things that makes life hard, having these ways to step back and reassess and take that break and tap out for a moment, so that we're not as tempted to tap out for forever. So I love the fact that you've shared your story and some things that you've done personally, but I also want to call it your impact on me as well. Just really just stepping back to go think through it. So I don't have to, when I need it, trying to also ideate. When I need it, I can tap in. And if I don't remember, it's on the notes section of my phone. I scroll and I go. So I really appreciate that about the integrity of what you build and what you share, and how you create that spark for others, including myself.
That means so much. I appreciate you.
So you mentioned the move. I saw that you are no longer in Nashville. You want to tell everyone where you have relocated and what's going on with you?
Sure thing. I'll try to be brief here, but it is something that, is crazy. I can't believe we did it this way. But, at 42 years old, I sold almost everything I owned back in Nashville, everything, and moved from Nashville, Tennessee to Asheville, North Carolina. We have literally a river cabin in the mountains here, with the river right across the street from the house. And it's truly one of those things. It's fully furnished, and so we didn't need anything to move in, and it's a rental. So we signed a 6-month lease with no plans, and so we're here.
I
And,
love
and it truly came down to, I talk about playing adventure all the time. Now it's time to step it up a notch. And that's exactly what we did, is we stepped it up a notch in our lives, because it's important to live that stuff. And so we're doing it. We wanted to get to the mountains for a long time. And I'll tell you, we're a week and a few days into living here, and I haven't felt the light. I feel very light. I was on the phone with my dad 2 nights ago, and the first thing he said, he goes, "Son, you sound different." And I was like,
wow.
"What do you mean?" He goes, "You sound happy." He's like, "I know you've been happy, but like you sound, I don't know." And then I said, "Lighter." And he goes, "That's it. You sound lighter." And, I don't know. I didn't make it a point to like note down, like, feel lighter when you, or anything like that. It was just, everybody we've come in contact with here, they're just incredibly welcoming. But I do think that all of that comes back down to environment. I talk about this a lot, but environment is everything, and we needed a shakeup. And the way that we did that was commit to we sold everything, and we got here not knowing anybody, and just figuring it out. And I would say that we're figuring it out okay. Like we're stoked to be here. And we already are calling this place home, which is crazy. But I have some deep connections in Nashville. I'll be back and forth there
Awesome.
often. But yeah, it's been great.
Well, congratulations. And so
Thanks.
congratulations. And clearly I need to just talk to you more often, because you just unlocked something for me. I am, again, I've actually, I've been thinking a lot about and journaling a lot, and talking to friends and trying to figure out, how do I solve something? Like, as a New Yorker, I've been in Texas for 18, 19 years now. And I'm just sort of feeling like I need something different, a different kind of environment and season. But I'm also, married. I have a 15-year-old son. I'm thinking about, well, I don't want to disrupt, right, his high school years, all of that. I'm like, can I stay long enough to get him through high school, right? All that balancing. And literally this morning, before I came in here to have this podcast with you, I was deep in thought and journaling about this, and just sort of stuck around, what's my optionality? And I bifurcated it. For me, it came down to, which version of win, lose, lose, win am I going to choose, right? Either I'm going to choose me and he suffers, or I'm going to choose him and I suffer. But what you just shared, the fact that it's a 6-month lease, it's a temporary point of time, I was like, what if I use the summers when he's off, and we go and rent someplace, at least for a summer, and it gives me a chance, because I'm not even sure like where I want to go. That may be the journey of exploring over the next several summers, where I might eventually move to. I do have a short list of places in mind. So that's a wonderful, much appreciated and much needed unlock. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing.
That's incredible. The timing of that couldn't have been perfect. Hearing you talk about that. Wow. And that's, I think that's why we kind of just made the commitment and did it, is because originally the plan was not this. It was to do different Airbnbs for 1 month in different cities and make our way to New England. That was our original plan. But we saw this house, we saw the location, it was surrounded by mountains, and we were like, we need this, and we need it for a little bit of time. And it was a fully furnished place. That's kind of what locked it in. So yes, like 100%. I don't know if we're going to be here at the end of the 6 months. We might stay here, but I don't know. And that's, I think, the beauty of it. That's the point.
I love that. As we sort of impart and look to share some of or continue to share our insights with our audience, without telling people what they should do, what do you now understand about self-leadership that maybe you didn't earlier in your career? And what feels most important for people to discover for themselves, especially when they're still navigating burnout, transition, or quiet dissatisfaction?
I think for me, it's something that I say often, but it doesn't get old ever. And that is that I came to the conclusion for me that I realized if I wanted to thrive as an adult, I had to go back to who I was as a kid. And that leaves me open to not just creativity, but that imagination piece that I've incorporated so much in the past to leadership, leading teams, even doing advisory and consulting work for other businesses, bringing that in, because what that did was it created immediately a deep sense of connection and trust with just being yourself and bringing that creativity and joy to the table. Yes, this company might be financially just going downhill quickly, but if you bring that type of energy and creativity and joy to the table, then I've seen it firsthand, and 100% of the time, it brings a sense of collaboration to where you immediately become one in the room. You're on the same page, and you just you get to work. And there's the thing is that there's less excuses being made from myself, my team, or my client. And I think that's, part of the reason why I think having a kids brand as well, as my other company, that's like, I can't explain how much that teaches me. How much elementary age kids teach me about leadership all the time. Every time I do a workshop in an elementary class or, a library, or some of the work that I do, like I leave there and I'm like, wow, I might use that for the next client. Like it truly is magic. I don't know what other word to use. It's magic. But I think that for others who might be, in that same boat of like, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm exhausted, or, it's life is hard. We are messy humans doing hard things. And so for me, it's being able to, I like to always tell the people I work with, or just people I meet, it's being able to step back for just a moment and evaluate the landscape and be able to trust yourself enough to make a decision right there, to either stay there, or to change it. And so what that comes down to is just knowing that you have the control, and that I did not realize I had for so long. I was not in control, or I thought I was not in control. That I was going off of what everybody said. In my 20s, I was like, what are my goals? But to tack on the back half, it was like, what are my goals that everybody wants me to do and accomplish? And then my 30s were like, what do I want for my life? But what do these people want me to be? And so I think in my 40s and after this year, after this past summer, the shift was, I'm not doing goals. I'm not doing like, what do I want for my life? It's what excites me. And for me, it's the age of less asking and more telling. Because too much hey, I'm doing this thing. What do you think? What do you think? And really like taking that feedback and delaying the process of just getting started, just do the thing. And so I told myself no more, never again. And that again, it just kept, all of these affirming results. People coming to me like, hey, do you want to do a TEDx talk? Hey, do you want to be on the cover of this business article? Hey, and it's like, where's this coming from? And it's because I just stopped, I just stopped really thinking too much about stuff, is what I believe happened. But I think being able to step back and take a moment for yourself and to see what truly fires you up and what you can do about it in that moment.
That so very much resonates for me. And I want to pause here and speak directly to our listening audience again, because as you think about what has surfaced in this conversation, I want to encourage you to identify maybe one thing that it's helping you see more clearly about yourself, and what's one small step you can take to honor that. I think as Adam mentioned, right, sometimes it's just the awareness, right? Like it's just observing to get to a place of awareness. Sometimes you're aware and it's like, well, what do I do about it? And like me, I was aware, but I was like, I can't figure out how to operationalize this in a way that creates win-wins. But I'm thinking, I'm processing, I'm exploring. And then even in this conversation where Adam has made the move, right? Like you moved to Asheville recently. You took the action to bring it to light. And I'm excited to take the action that's going to come out of this conversation of just talking. I was iterating on my own. I was talking to a few people, but just broadening the conversation, you helped to create an unlock for me. So I'm excited to operationalize for this coming summer what the art of the possible could be for my family. So for those who are listening, just think about what's one thing that's come up for you and one small step you can take to honor that. You also might want to, pause even right now as we're talking to write it down or simply sit with it for a minute and not rush past that moment of clarity that you're being offered. At the same time, a lot of times in conversations like this, it doesn't just resonate for us personally, but it also reminds us of someone else who's going through a similar journey or who might be interested in learning more about the same thing. If there is someone in your network that comes to mind or your family, I just want to encourage you, invite them. Share the episode with them as an invitation to reflect and think about what's next, what could possibly be next for them. And Adam, before we close, I just want to make space for you to share where people can learn more about your work and how they can stay connected with you if this conversation resonates with them.
Sure. You can head over to adamtanaka.com, and that kind of gives a rundown of just what I'm working on, and you can get in touch with me. The message button goes directly to my email. I respond to every single email. And then cavehoussupply.com is my kids brand, and doing that work every single day as well, with kiddos and families, and of course LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn often. If I'm not posting, I'm definitely writing messages or commenting there and connecting with people.
Awesome. Adam, thank you for your honesty and for the work you're doing to expand how we think about leadership, creativity, and mental well-being. And to everyone listening, thank you for spending this time with us. If this conversation was meaningful, I invite you to follow the podcast and join us for the next episode. Well, you'll hear from another guest whose journey and perspective will continue to challenge how we think about leading self, owning our choices, and what's possible when we stop living on autopilot. Until next time.